This episode is brought to you by Steamy Chick Vaginal Steam Facilitator Certification. Learn the ancient practice of vaginal steaming to improve menstrual cycle health and fertility. Become a vaginal steam facilitator for only $194 online and begin offering this service that is quickly growing in demand as women receive this advanced form of women's health. Head over to steamychick.com and click certification for more information. You are cordially invited. Yes, you. You're invited to join us in my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery group program, starting in July of 2018. Learn how to chart your cycles, gain confidence using fertility awareness as your primary method of birth control, optimize your cycles for achieving pregnancy, and really learn how to utilize your menstrual cycle as a diagnostic tool. For more information, head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program. That's fertilityfriday.com/group program. Can't wait to see you there. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 207. Welcome to the 207th episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from fertilityfriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. I'm excited to bring today's episode to you. I was thinking about what I should talk about in today's episode, and I thought it would actually be really interesting to talk about some of the things that I'm doing to prepare my body for pregnancy. So, spoiler alert, I am not pregnant, and I'm actually not trying to get pregnant. I'm actively avoiding pregnancy. But for those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, know that I have two children. So my eldest son is about 5.5, and my youngest son is about 2.5. So it's been a while since I've been pregnant. But in my case, I did not have that feeling after having my youngest son that we were done. So it's still kind of out there. We don't have specific plans. We haven't picked a date. We are not trying. But for me, it's something that I think about within the next couple of years. So I'm in that stage of it's on my radar, and there's certain things that I'm actually actively doing to prepare my body for pregnancy. Especially after having two children, there was definitely things that I noticed that I wanted to kind of focus on. I've said this on the podcast a lot, but having kids is hard on your body, and it does deplete your nutrients. What I always say to my clients is that you never go into pregnancy and come out with more nutrient stores than you did coming into it. And as you get older, it gets harder. And so I noticed a difference between pregnancy number 1 and pregnancy number 2. So for me, in many ways, I found pregnancy number 2 to be harder on my body than pregnancy number 1. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I'm actively doing now to prepare my body for pregnancy, even though I am absolutely not trying to get pregnant at this stage. And it's not 100% decided if there will actually be a third baby. Going from 1 to 2 is a little bit different. Going from 2 to 3 is like a really big commitment. Like, you're outnumbered. Usually have to switch up your vehicles. It's just a bigger life change. So there's a lot of reasons why we've kind of held off on that possibility. But even so, because the possibility is still there are certain things that I'm actively doing so that to get my body into a really good space if we do decide to go ahead and have a third baby. And I thought it'd be fun to share that with you. And for those of you who are in a similar boat, I know a lot of the women who join my group programs, a lot of the clients that I work with, there's a good percentage of women who I work with who are actively trying, so really in the thick of it. And there is another percentage of women who are actually actively avoiding pregnancy. And so they're really, jumping in to learn fertility awareness for birth control, but they do have a time horizon. And so whether it's 6 months from now, whether it's 12 months from now, or even 2 years from now, or way in the future so far that there's no date set to it, what's really great about the 10-week program and the coaching programs that I teach is that we focus on the charting aspect of it so that you're really good with the method itself. And if you're wanting to preserve your fertility, so not take any hormones to disturb your natural cycles, but have effective birth control, it's a really great way to do that. We really go through that in depth. But also, we talk a lot about how to prepare your body for pregnancy, how to really just focus on that. And I think it's helpful to know that you can actually focus on getting your body healthy, focusing on your cycles, learning from your cycles, and really using them to guide what you do, because they give you so much information about your health, and you can really track your progress by taking a look at your cycles. And that's something you can do when you're actively avoiding pregnancy. So that's something that I wanted to share, that even though I'm actually currently very actively avoiding pregnancy, strictly using fertility awareness method successfully to prevent pregnancy because I don't actually want to be pregnant right now, I still have it on my time horizon that it's a possibility. And so there's a lot of things that I'm doing right now simultaneously with actively avoiding pregnancy. So I know some of you are in that same boat. And so that's something I want to talk about. And of course, this applies to everyone listening who's actively trying, because a lot of these things might be helpful just to kind of think about. I'm sure you've already thought about a lot of those things. So if you're wanting to go into more depth, we are starting the July round of Fertility Awareness Mastery. That's my 10-week group program. And we're doing one group. We'll be meeting on Tuesday evenings, Eastern time. And so I'd love for you to join us. And I want to invite you to join us if you're wanting to really delve into this deeper, really get a handle on the charting aspect of it. And also if you're wanting to go deeper and actually work towards preserving and supporting your fertility while using fertility awareness and to achieve your intentions. So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program and apply to join us in July. It's only, as this episode airs, we'll be starting in about 3 weeks. So it's actually, coming up pretty soon. There's still spaces left as I release this, but there's only a limited number of spaces because I'm only doing one group this time. So if you're wanting to join us, please make sure to apply sooner than later. So again, that's fertilityfriday.com/group program. And before we jump into today's episode, I just want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, Steamy Chick. And so for those of you, I think most of you have listened to episode 202 with Kelly Garza. But if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, definitely go back and take a look. I've had so much feedback from my clients, and there was lots of great feedback in our Facebook community from that episode. I think it really opened a lot of eyes. It really just exposed us to this really incredible ancient practice that's such a gentle, non-invasive type of practice, vaginal steaming, but can have such incredible results and have such a significant impact on your menstrual cycle health. And I know for many of you listening, not only are you interested in vaginal steaming for yourself and for your own menstrual health, but you may also be interested in sharing the wisdom and the knowledge with other women. And so if that is the case, then make sure to head over to steamychick.com and take a look at the vaginal steam facilitator training. So for $194 altogether, you can actually become a vaginal steam facilitator and spread the word about vaginal steaming. So again, that's steamychick.com. And you can click on the steam facilitator certification for more information. Now let's jump into today's episode. All right, so we're going to be talking about the 10 things that I'm doing to prepare for pregnancy. So as I jump into this episode, I have 10 things listed. I hope it may expand though. I may add another one, but at this stage it is 10 things. And so, it's interesting because these are things that I have been thinking about even right after I had my youngest son. So that was 2.5 years ago. It's been a while, but a few things that were different. So I'll just share a little bit about the pregnancies and how they were different. So when I got pregnant with my eldest son, I conceived when I was 29 years old. And then I had him. I gave birth to him when I was 30 years old. So I wasn't like super, super young. I was kind of in that middle range. And then when I conceived my youngest son, let me see if I did the math right, but I think I was about 33 or something like that, 33 years old. And what struck me was, overall pregnancy has been very nice to me. I don't actually get a lot of nausea. So the pregnancy itself is okay. I had a really positive experience with the pregnancy. But for those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, you may know that I have had a thyroid issue for a really long time. It was identified through charting when I was in my early 20s. And so this is just, it's not something that has ever progressed to be really severe. I think because it was caught early and because I was managing it fairly well. But what I did find was that both times that I conceived, my thyroid was definitely impacted. So when I conceived with my eldest son, I ended up on about twice as much medication. And then when I conceived with my youngest son, I ended up on like 3 times as much medication, and I had to have these regular meetings with my doctor every, I think, 6 weeks, or 6 to 8 weeks. And so it was really intense. And I was meeting with my doctor, with my naturopath, doing my own research, and just kind of working on kind of sorting that out. So when I had my youngest son about 2.5 years ago, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was replenishing my nutrients, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and also stabilizing my thyroid and really getting a handle on that. Of course, as you can imagine, with that happening with the second child, and at the time, whenever it happens, if we decide to have a third child, I'll be older. Seems like it's hard. Pregnancy is harder on the body the older that we get. So it was definitely in the back of my mind, like, what can I do to prepare my body for pregnancy? So with that said, let's get into it. So the first thing I do, and this will come to a surprise to exactly no one, I think. But one of the things that I do very intentionally is I eat liver regularly. So I actually take my own medicine, so to speak. So, all of my clients have heard me talk about liver. So all my clients are like chuckling right now as they listen to this. And for those of you who've listened to the podcast for a while, you'll know that I often incorporate episodes that talk about nutrition through food, and, really looking to incorporate some of the most nutrient dense foods that you can. And so I think it's interesting because there's a lot of different ideas of what nutrient dense food really is. And, leafy green vegetables, for example, are a great source of nutrition. But if you compare the nutrition kind of pound for pound, say with liver and organ meats just blows it completely out of the water. So in case you're wondering why I'm talking about liver and what that has to do with preparing for pregnancy, when you actually research the nutrient content of liver, you'll find that there's no other food like it. Liver really contains a higher density of nutrition than any other food. It's like a vitamin. So it's like nature's vitamin. And I mean, there's liver from all different kinds of animals, obviously. So like beef liver, bison liver, lamb liver, pork liver, chicken, and I'm sure the list goes on. And each type of animal, goose liver, duck liver, but each type of animal will have a slightly different composition. So some animals have higher levels of folate and B vitamins. Others have a higher iron content or vitamin B12. But either way, when you're eating the liver, you're consuming this really nutrient dense food. So even if you were to compare, for instance, beef liver to red meat, what's really interesting is that beef liver contains nearly at least 5 to 7 times the amount of vitamin B12 per serving. So if you have a serving of equal size, it contains anywhere from 7 to 8 times the amount of folate. It contains nearly 4 times the amount of choline. It contains orders of magnitude higher amounts of vitamin A. So compared to red meat, it contains even 100 times as much vitamin A. And so it's a really dense and rich source of nutrition in a way that you really don't get when you're consuming vegetables, and even when you're consuming just regular meat. Like if you're consuming chicken breast, for example, you're just absolutely not getting the same density of nutrition. So I like to be efficient. I really like to kind of do things. It takes the same amount of time to say, for example, like to prepare your favorite dish. If you really like pasta and you're making like a pasta sauce, it takes the exact same time to do, say, like a ground chicken or a ground beef that it would to add a little bit of liver to it. And just by adding a little bit of liver to something like that, you're going to like 10x the nutrient density. So that's one of the things that I have consciously done to prepare my body for pregnancy, and also to recover and restore the nutrients that were depleted during the course of pregnancy and breastfeeding. So with both of my kids, not only, did I have 2 kids, but I also breastfed both of them for a minimum of 2 years. So I don't remember the exact months that I breastfed, but it was over 2 years for both children. And so pregnancy and breastfeeding are 2 times of high demand on your body. Your children are literally sucking the nutrients out of your body. And it's a really important time to pay attention to what you're putting in your body and just have that understanding and that knowledge that you really do want to take some time to purposely replenish the nutrients that were depleted. And so for me, one of the things that I have consistently done is eating liver. And so in terms of liver, I eat it in lots of different ways. I'll make pate. Like I said, I'll put it in ground meat dishes. For me, I grew up eating liver, so it's not that big of a deal. So I will actually cook it and eat it as well. But there's lots of different ways that I eat it. Lately, I've really been into pate. So that's one of the ways that I've been incorporating it. And I also eat other organ meats. So I will regularly buy whatever the butcher has for me, but I'll regularly buy beef heart, something that I get a lot. I'll regularly buy marrow bones. I'll regularly buy marrow bones and cook them and eat them. I'll regularly make bone broths and use like knuckle bones and things like that. I eat the weird bits, and I'll regularly buy kidneys or even beef tongue. So I'm outing myself on the podcast. I eat organ meats, but just to share, that's something that I do purposely. And one thing that I'll share as well is that throughout my 20s, I consistently had low iron. So I always had heavy periods, and I was always trying to, figure this whole iron thing out. And it wasn't until I started eating liver and organ meats that my iron became fine. And so it's just something that for me, there's that obvious kind of iron piece to that. But there's, that's where I get my folate. That's where I get my vitamin B12. That's where I get my choline. And that's where I get my energy, because I definitely notice a difference when I consume liver. And I consider it, like I said, I consider it to be a food-based vitamin. And so literally that is part of my self-care, making sure that I'm getting a really high density of nutrition. So that's the first thing. So the second thing that I do, and that I have been doing to prepare my body for pregnancy, is taking cod liver oil. And so in addition to eating liver, I regularly take cod liver oil. And I know one of the questions that my clients will often ask me is, what's the difference between cod liver oil and fish oil? And so the main difference between cod liver oil and fish oil is that cod liver oil obviously comes from the liver. So other than its like delicious flavor, cod liver oil is a really great source of vitamin A. And so when it comes to pregnancy and fertility and hormone production, vitamin A is really important for hormone production. Vitamin A plays a really critical role in reproduction. And so vitamin A plays a really important role in egg health, in ovarian function. For men, vitamin A plays a really critical role in sperm development. And in addition, so what makes fish oil and cod liver oil different is that cod liver oil does contain the vitamin A and vitamin D. And like fish oil, cod liver oil also contains omega-3s. And so in addition to the vitamin A, like the nutrient content of the cod liver oil, it's also a really great source of omega-3 fatty acids. And so that's really important as well for egg development, for egg health. It's really important for baby's brain development and my own brain development as well. So that's one of the things that I have regularly, consistently been doing just to make sure that I'm always getting a really good amount of vitamin A, and I'm always getting a really good amount of omega-3s to improve egg quality and support hormone health and reduce inflammation and support healthy cycles. So number 3, the third thing that I've been doing, and so this is kind of like a summary of what we talked about already, but I'll get into it a little bit more, replenishing vital nutrients. That's actually what I wrote down. And so as I kind of iterated, pregnancy takes a lot out of you, like literally and figuratively. And it's not just the pregnancy. So, I mean, you're literally making a human being. And so I've said this on the podcast before, but when my son was born, I remember, so my son was born, he was born in his bedroom. I gave birth at home both times. It just worked out that I was able to do that. And I had midwives to support me. And so when he was born, like I'm in the birthing tub and he's like born, and I'm holding him for the first time, looking down at him, totally in shock. But I remember thinking like, where did he come from? And it sounds really silly to say, but if you think about it, like all of the things that you were eating, all of the nutrients that you've consumed and all those types of things, like those are literally the building blocks of your baby. And so when you give birth, you realize that, it came from you. It came from everything that you were giving your body to nourish it. And so in addition to that kind of very literal, like nutrients coming out of your body type of situation, giving birth and having babies, it can be very hard on the body. After giving birth, there's a lot of things that can happen. As I mentioned, my thyroid was affected by birth, and my energy was affected. And so I found both times that really focusing on a nutrient-dense diet, it really helped me to be a mom during that time. Now, most resources and information talk about the importance of, eating for baby, right? Like eating to make sure that you build a healthy baby. And so that is critical. It's very important. But it's also important to eat for yourself because in addition to making a healthy baby, you still have to be a mom. And so I talk about that a lot on the show, but you still have to be a mom. You still have to get up in the middle of the night. Like your life is turned upside down. It takes months before your baby starts sleeping normally in most situations. And breastfeeding isn't always a breeze. Sometimes it's actually really hard and can be really hard for weeks on end. And you are breastfeeding. So you're literally feeding your child. Everything you're not just eating for yourself, you're eating for yourself and your child. And that continues. And in my case, it continued for over 2 years. And so I found that it was extremely important for me to be very conscious, especially in those early stages, really important for me to be conscious about what I was eating. It's not easy. It's really easy to just forget. It's easy to forget meals and to go to kind of not eat throughout the day, but it's really, really important. So that's something that I focused on really critically in those first several months. I was really fortunate to have some support my partner was really good about helping me to make sure he would make me breakfast and make sure I always had something to eat. But that's so important. So in terms of what that looks like, obviously I talked about the liver and organ meat, so that's a big part of it, but it's not all that I eat. My diet is not only meat. My diet consists of a lot of vegetables. So real foods is what I try to focus on, meaning meat, vegetables, healthy fats, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of fermented foods, just really trying to focus on like actual real foods, less packaged foods. It is more work because it does mean then that I'm cooking. So for me, in a very practical sense, I'm in the kitchen for a couple hours every single day, always cooking for my family. And every meal is pretty much cooked. One of the challenges of eating like a real food diet means that you're actually cooking a lot. You're in the kitchen, you're making food, vegetables, if you're buying them fresh, you cook in those vegetables every day, cooking meats and all of that. So that's something that I do, and it's a habit. It's something I do on a daily basis, but really just in general, focusing on eating real foods, always focusing on which vegetables are in season, what can I cook, what's available, what fruits should I be getting, and all those types of things. How can I structure my snacks and meals throughout the day to make sure I'm getting really good nutrition? So that's something that I've been focusing on and always in the back of my mind, thinking about how to replenish these nutrients to prepare for pregnancy. So number 4, eating healthy fats. And so that's something that has been a really important part of preparing for pregnancy for a couple of different reasons. The first reason is that healthy fats are actually a source of nutrition. So sourcing grass-fed butter, pastured eggs, looking for, in my case, we have access to whole milk, unpasteurized dairy products, and from pasture-raised animals. And so that's something that's really important to me. That's one of the sources of healthy fats in my house. So given that the milk is coming directly from the cow, it comes with all the fat. And so that's important for several different reasons. So as I mentioned, one is important for the actual nutrients contained in the fat. So when you're eating animal fats, they contain fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. And so, that's just a way to really ensure that I'm getting the nutrients that I need. But from a practical standpoint, I think I've said it on the podcast a couple of times, but one of the things that I've struggled with over the years, especially in my 20s, was sugar cravings. And I was like a sugar-holic. So when I was a young person, when I was a in my younger days as a child and as a teen, I ate all the sugar all the time. So I had like the candies and the chocolate and just all the time. And I've learned a lot about that now and why that was. I think I was hungry. Sometimes I wasn't necessarily getting enough protein and fat. Like I wasn't getting like a full enough meal. And so I would just perpetually be hungry. And that was a challenge of mine as well. Like I would eat my breakfast and I would be hungry 30 minutes later, and I would just spend my whole day in these like hunger cycles. So eating healthy fats has proven to be extremely important to help me to balance my meals such that I can feel full at each meal and so it'll tide me over until the next meal, and really curb the sugar cravings. So given that there are only 3 macronutrient categories, everything that goes into your body is either a protein, a fat, and a carbohydrate. And so by focusing on healthy fats, making sure that I'm always getting a balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrates at my meals. So choosing a protein source, which in my case is a meat, carbohydrates, which is often vegetables and fruits, cooking those vegetables, sauteing them in grass-fed butter or coconut oil or some sort of fat to make sure that I'm always getting a balance. I'm incorporating avocados, having bacon and eggs for breakfast. Eggs are a really good source of healthy fats. So and then as I mentioned, the whole unpasteurized dairy. So whether that's whole milk, whether it's cream cheese or butter, other types of dairy, that has been really helpful for me. And when I had my youngest son, that's when my family actually first had gained access to unpasteurized milk. And during that time when my youngest son, like right after he was born and during the first like 6 to 12 months of breastfeeding, I found having access to whole milk with the fat to be invaluable. And I found that it actually changed it changed my milk. So I can still remember when, after I had my eldest son, I didn't have access to the whole milk, and I can't drink regular milk. So for me, part of having access to unpasteurized milk is that my body, I can't actually tolerate regular milk. So I wasn't drinking it before, and I'm not sure that I was getting as much fat as I'm getting now. So I remember a distinct difference in the quality of my milk. And I remember with my eldest son, my milk, sometimes it would look kind of blue, like it was really white and look kind of blue. And there would be like a tiny little bit of fat on the top, like if I pumped and I could see how it set in the fridge. But with my youngest son, after we had access to the milk, like my milk was like yellow in a good way. Like it was like yellow, wholesome, and there was a thick layer of fat at the top. And I remember that when I was breastfeeding my youngest son, he would seem more satisfied with his milk. So with my first son, breastfeeding was actually quite challenging for quite a while, and he often just would seem like he wasn't satisfied. And looking back and having these 2 completely different experiences, the diet consuming healthy fats really played a role in the quality of my milk, because I could actually physically see the difference when I would pump. And my youngest son was actually, he seemed more satisfied with the milk. Like he would actually finish and like pull off the breast and look around and be finished drinking. Whereas my youngest son seemed like he could never get enough. So that is not scientific. That is N of 1. That is just my experience. But in terms of like how it helped me, like it really helped me to kind of manage the cravings. Like for any of you who are listening to this episode and have breastfed yourselves, you will then have had that experience of like, you're going through your day and all of a sudden you're like starving, because it's just something about breastfeeding. It does require more calories. Like it does increase your caloric requirement for the day. And so for me, I found that just incorporating healthy fats was really important during that phase. And overall, I found it to be really helpful for balancing my meals, managing my cravings, and helping me to feel satisfied when I eat food. And yeah, the older that I get, the less patience I have to feel hungry all the time. So that's number 4, eating healthy fats. Number 5, eating fermented foods and consuming bone broth regularly to support my gut health. So that is one of the ways that I'm preparing for pregnancy, always in the back of my mind to support my gut health, just to encourage like healthy bacteria and also to encourage a healthy gut wall. So, and the ways that I do that are fermented foods. And so I eat a variety of fermented foods. Typically, I'll make kefir. So since I have access to the milk directly from the farm, I have kefir grains. They're like a pet or something like that because you have to feed them. You have to change the milk every week. You have to consistently have them make kefir. So we make kefir regularly in our house. We always have some in the fridge, and so that's one of the ways that I encourage healthy bacteria and make sure that I'm getting my fermented foods. When you make kefir, you can also use, or if you have access to raw dairy, when the milk separates, you get curds and whey. And so now I know what that is. I didn't know what that was until I actually started getting the milk directly from the farm. But you can use the whey. All that is like there's water, like milk separates. So if you are making kefir or something like that, and to make kefir, you leave the milk on the counter and you put your kefir grains in there, and then you just leave it on it's the easiest thing to make. You just leave it on the counter for about 24 hours or so. And then the kefir grains, they do their thing. So they consume the lactose and they ferment your milk, and then it changes into kefir, and then it can actually stay in the fridge for a really long time. Anyways, so the milk solids will separate. So you end up with kind of like a solid part and a water part, depending on how long you leave it. And the water part is called whey. And so whey is teeming with healthy bacteria. So you can use that whey to start anything you want to ferment. So for instance, when I make sauerkraut, I'll use the whey to start the sauerkraut. And I'll also sometimes use the whey to make kind of like a water kefir drink. So basically it's like a fizzy drink. It's like a carbonated drink, except it's carbonated because it's fermented. So I've made all kinds of different things. I've made like beet kvass and like all this different stuff. But basically there's always something fermented in my house. And so that's one of the things that I do purposely just to kind of keep my gut health in order. And with, again, in the back of my mind, preparing for pregnancy. Bone broth is something that I make quite frequently. So I've already mentioned that. I'll buy different types of bones and whatever's available. And I try to get the knuckle bones, like the connective tissue. I've always aimed to have a really gelatinous broth such that when I put it in the fridge, it's like Jell-O. That's how I gauge how effective the broth has been. And so those are things that I make regularly. The broth, I used to make it every single week. Now it's, at least every 2 weeks or so, but I do make it regularly, and it's just a part of what I do anyways. But again, it's something that I do in preparation for pregnancy just to make sure my body's kind of where it needs to be. So number 6 is optimizing my thyroid health. So as I mentioned, both pregnancies have thrown off my thyroid to varying degrees, leaving me having to change my medications and having more appointments and things like that. From when I got pregnant with my eldest son, I've learned quite a bit more about the thyroid and how to support it. And so all that means, that part of preparing for pregnancy, was that I wasn't really comfortable considering trying for pregnancy again until I had my thyroid sorted out. So in my case, I've worked closely with my naturopath and with my doctor and, trying different things and making sure to optimize my own thyroid health. And of course, my cycle plays a really important role. So I'm always paying attention to my cycle. I'm paying attention to my basal body temperature to make sure my metabolism is where it needs to be, because after all, your thyroid health is directly related to your metabolism. And so when you take your temperature in the morning, when you chart your cycles, you're getting a reading of your basal body metabolism. And all that means is that it's kind of like the baseline, the minimum energy that your body is going to expend. And so if you have an underactive thyroid, then your temperature will be lower. Like your body's operating at a lower temperature, your metabolism is lower. And your body's doing that as a way to try to conserve energy. So given that this is something that is not new for me, it's something that it's been kind of on that periphery for all these years. I'm always paying really close attention to my cycle, paying really close attention to my metabolism, and paying really close attention to all the different cycle parameters, because that always tells me where my thyroid is at. And also because this is something that I've dealt with for many years, I'm also very attuned. So if my thyroid is ever off, I notice my energy declining, I notice it in my chart. So it's something that it's very easy for me to tell if something is ever off. And so over the past 2.5 years since I had my youngest son, I was really focused just on improving my thyroid health, paying really close attention to my charts, and just making sure that everything was where it needs to be, making sure to address nutrient deficiencies, making sure to have my levels tested regularly, and really working with, I actually somewhere in there got a little bit fed up with the doctor that I had been working with, and actually sought out a new practitioner in my area who specialized more in thyroid function. And so I'm in there too. This is something that I talk about with all of my clients, but for myself, I still have to negotiate with practitioners. I still have to advocate for myself to get the care that I need. And so that's something that I've actively been working on. And so the great thing about charting, though, is that it always shows up in your chart. And so after paying close attention and all of those types of things and really focusing on that, it's really great to see the results. So whereas, 6 months to a year after I had my son, I was still not 100% happy with where my thyroid was at. Now, 2.5 years later, I'm much happier with where everything's at, where the test results are at. So my efforts have been successful, if you will. So number 7, optimizing my menstrual cycles. So that goes hand in hand with the previous point, but that's one of the ways that I've been preparing for pregnancy. I think that it's really helpful. I love charting. I mean, of course I love charting. I started a whole podcast about it. But, after you have a baby, so in my case, because I was breastfeeding, my cycles didn't return right away. So my experience is pretty typical. I was breastfeeding quite a bit, and my cycles didn't return for about 8 months or so. And then even when they returned, they weren't, it came back, but it wasn't like completely normal. And there are changes. So when you're breastfeeding, for instance, like when my kids would get sick, and then we'd kind of go back to more breastfeeding, while we're dealing with that illness or something like that, or that milestone or whatever it is, then the cycle might be delayed a little bit longer and different things would change. So throughout that postpartum period, like the period while I was breastfeeding, I could definitely see the impact of breastfeeding on my cycle. And so, as I mentioned, like if I'm breastfeeding more because of something that happens, then my ovulation would often be delayed and things like that. So my cycles were typical breastfeeding postpartum cycles, just not exactly there yet. It's really typical when you are breastfeeding and before your cycles come back. Like it's really typical when your cycles finally do come back for the parameters not to just be 100%. So you may see like a shorter luteal phase. And as I mentioned, you may see like not a steady pattern. You may see that your ovulation is kind of disrupted by what's happening in your life. And so in my case, throughout this period of time, what I was doing was just paying really close attention to my cycles with the knowledge that of why, it's delayed this time or, what's going on. So that's always really helpful. I really like having that information. And it's very helpful. And what it helps as well is, I never worry. I never worry if I'm breastfeeding my kid and he had a little bit of a fever or something and we had to stay up a couple of nights and he, breastfed way more than usual and my cycle's delayed. I'm never worried about that because since I track everything, I have a really good sense of why that's happening. And I'm able to tell anyways, like when I'm moving into my fertile window. And during that time, I was actively avoiding pregnancy as well. So regardless of the cycle fluctuations, I was still able to chart effectively and effectively use the method to avoid pregnancy, just to put that out there. So, but I guess what I'm getting at is that once I stopped breastfeeding, so once we weaned and my cycle started to normalize again, it really helped me to have a sense of how I'm doing and how everything's fitting together. And so one of the things that's important to me in terms of like how I would use my cycles to help to prepare for pregnancy and how it informs my decision of when I might feel comfortable starting to try. In my case, I'm really looking at my cycles and looking to see when they actually start to normalize, when those patterns start to kind of look like the pre-pregnancy patterns. And that gives me a really clear sense of that I'm on the right track, that my thyroid is normalized, that my nutrient stores are where they need to be, and that my cycles are robust and regular and healthy. That's a really good sign for me of when my body is actually ready to do this again. So paying attention to my cycles, yes, very important. Okay, so number 8, as you've probably gathered, one of the ways that I'm preparing for pregnancy is actually purposely spacing my children. And so there's a lot of reasons why, everyone makes different decisions of how far apart and how close together you want to have your children. In my case, I purposely took more time for a couple of reasons. One is that I have 2 children. So the thought of bringing in another one when my youngest was really, really small, like when he was like one or 1.5, that brought me a lot of stress. the thought of bringing another child into the mix. So in my case, what felt right for our family was just to take some more time. It's easy to feel like your kids are growing up and, oh, he's 2, he's mature, but a 2-year-old is still a 2-year-old. And, the way I see it I felt like my little one needed to be a baby. He needed his mommy. And I just didn't want to kind of push that. I don't know. I'm just scared. I'm just scared of having, I would be scared of having 3 under 3 or something like that. So that's just a personal choice. So that's one of the reasons, because I felt like it would be good to kind of let the baby grow a little bit and get a little bit older so that, if we decide to have another child, then he would be a little bit more ready, and there'll still be jealousy and an adjustment phase. But in my mind, I thought that it might be a little bit easier if he was a little bit older. So that was one of the reasons. But the other reason was, as I mentioned, pregnancy is harder on the body. And in my case, it really seemed like it was harder because I was older. It seemed like the first pregnancy wasn't as hard on the body, but the second pregnancy was. And so in my mind, I wanted to take a minimum of 2 to 3 years between my previous pregnancy to even think about the next one, partly because I just really wanted to give my body time to fully recover. I saw the changes in my body. I know how I felt. And I just wanted to really give my body the time just to fully recover so that I'm not really pushing it. It kind of freaked me out when I had the issues with the thyroid and having my doctor kind of fear-monger me and telling me, the reason that my doctor was fear-mongering me is because there are serious side effects associated with having low thyroid function that's not treated. So if it's treated, it's fine. But if it's not treated, there can be some, significant complications. So it kind of freaked me out. And in my case, I really wanted to give myself the time to figure it out and to really wait until my cycles were healthy and, all my labs are looking good, all my levels are looking really good. I didn't want to go into pregnancy with low vitamin anything. I wanted to just have everything really good because there's not kind of rush, like there's not overly a rush in my case. Not everyone has the luxury of time. So I'm just sharing what has transpired for me, but that was something that definitely was a consideration. So one of the ways that I was preparing my body for pregnancy was purposely giving myself time. And from a fertility awareness standpoint, what that means is that I'm actively avoiding pregnancy. So I'm actively charting. I chart every day. I pay attention to my fertile signs every day. And I am actively using fertility awareness for birth control at this stage because I just want to make sure I'm giving my body the time that it needs to really heal, rest, relax, replenish, restore, and for my cycles to, again, normalize and become really robust. And I really want to see that pattern of healthy, robust cycles for several months before I'm willing to jump back into even the possibility of a pregnancy. So number 9, optimizing my sleep. So yeah, confession time. I have a history of being a night owl. It's insane. I always joke that when I was a little kid, I didn't have a bedtime. And in my family, it was just said, like, my family, we are night owls. So it was an identity that I took on. And I'm still fighting with it to this day. But as I get older, I feel like my body just doesn't necessarily recover as well. I feel like I really, or maybe I'm just sick of feeling tired. So I don't really operate very well when I'm tired. I don't drink coffee or anything like that. Sometimes coffee gives me a stomach ache. I actually react to coffee. So even if I wanted to drink coffee, coffee is one of the things that I actually have a bit of a sensitivity to. And sometimes it actually gives me like a really bad stomach ache. So I don't really drink coffee and I don't really do caffeine. I noticed from a young age that my body seemed to very quickly get addicted to it. So if I drink coffee two days in a row, the third day, if I don't drink the coffee, I get like this crazy coffee withdrawal headache. So that means that I don't really do anything I don't take anything to make me feel alert. And so if I don't get enough sleep, I just feel tired. I just feel awful. And so one of the things that I've really focused on is optimizing my sleep. And I find that it really does make it makes a significant impact in my menstrual cycle, making sure that I'm optimizing my sleep. So, getting to bed early, which is not the easiest thing for me. This is not something that's really, really easy for me. And so that's something that I actively work on. But I also actively work on optimizing my sleep environment. So that's something that I talk about with clients all the time, but making sure the environment is dark. I actually sleep a lot better, more restful when I am sleeping in the dark, when my room is pitch black. It took a little bit of time for my partner to get used to this whole sleeping in the dark thing. I know he was cursing me in the beginning, like, I can't see anything. Why are you doing this to me? But we both sleep better, more soundly and all of that. But that's something that's been really important. And like I mentioned, it has made a difference in my menstrual cycle. So part of it is for the, having good sleep, balancing hormones, but part of it is to support a healthy menstrual cycle and just healthy hormone production and all of those things. And I just feel better. I feel a lot better when I get good sleep. So what optimizing sleep looks like for me is really aiming to get to bed early, having a bit of a wind down ritual. Sometimes, even as I record this, it is actually past 10 o'clock. So I'm actually up tonight recording this just to make sure that I get a podcast out this week. And so when work takes me into the evenings, which it does happen a couple of days a week, but one of the things I've done is to minimize the amount of work I do in the evenings. Another thing I do is when I do have my computer out and I am using the technology late at night, I have several apps and several different things that I use to dim the screen and to give the screens an orange hue. So right now, as I'm recording this podcast, my laptop looks kind of like orange. And that's a way to block out the blue light. And I find that by doing that, when it comes time for me to sleep, I'm still tired and I'm able to sleep. It really does make a difference to block out some of those blue lights. So really aiming to reduce the amount of work I do in the evenings. I've actually made a point of relaxing in the evenings more often than I used to, and doing kind of non-demand activities like reading or journaling or something like that. Trying to get into bed early at a decent hour. So in a perfect world, I'd be in my bed by 9:30, but often I'm not in my bed until 10:30 or 11. But this is a huge, believe it or not, huge improvement from the years and years of going to bed really late and then sleeping in the dark. So those are some of the main ways that I really optimize my sleep. And I find that it makes a huge difference in my menstrual cycle and also in my energy, because I'm a mom to two boys. They've got lots and lots of energy. So it's really, if mommy's going to be happy, mommy needs her sleep. So that's something that's been really important. And it's something that I do also to prepare for pregnancy as a way to stabilize and normalize my menstrual cycles. So number 10, we've made it to the last point. And I think that, well, actually, I remember why I put this point in. So number 10 is cooking healthy meals for my family. So it might not seem like a separate point because I talked about cooking, but the reason that I wanted to put this point in is that I purposely cook healthy meals for my family, incorporating all of the different things that we've talked about so that there's a trickle-down effect for my partner. So part of preparing for pregnancy, of course, I focused on the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm trying to do to replenish my own nutrients and support my body so that it's healthy and able to really maintain and sustain a healthy pregnancy. But, 50% of the genetic material comes from my partner. And so part of this whole concept of preparing for pregnancy, there's a definite trickle-down effect, because what I cook for my family, the food choices that I make, the foods that I prepare, that plays a huge part in what my whole family will eat. And so purposely incorporating liver into our meals and cooking it regularly, purposely eating organ meats and incorporating lots of bone broths and fermented foods and, the unpasteurized milk from the farm, all those types of things. Those are things that the whole family benefits from. So it's not just me. It also benefits the whole family. And, that is something that is really, really important. And, my partner's on board. He's really supportive and really good about everything. And he's also really mindful about his contribution. So if and when we actually made a point of picking a date and saying that, okay, we're going to start to try, what would happen would be more of a ramp up. So although we're always doing these things, all the things that I mentioned so far in the podcast, if we knew we were 6 months out from trying, I would make a point of just being very intentional, kind of daily, weekly focus and just kind of increase it and really focus on it as a way to do some kind of preconception nutrition, kind of taking it just a little bit more, making sure that we're just being a little bit more consistent with it. So that's number 10, not only doing it for myself, but having that trickle down effect so that my partner's benefiting from a nutrient dense kind of pro-pregnancy diet, such that when we get to the stage that we're ready to try, or when we know that we're approaching that stage, that we've been eating healthy for all this time and we are healthy, we are restoring our nutrients and really focusing on what we need for healthy sperm, healthy eggs, healthy menstrual cycle, healthy hormones and all those things. But also being very clear that it's not just me. It's not only me that matters. It's really important that he is also just as healthy and focused on these things as I am, because that plays a huge part in being prepared and being ready for pregnancy. So that brings us to the end. Those are the 10 things. Those are the top 10 things that I am doing to prepare for pregnancy. What I have been doing since my youngest son was born. Again, I am not pregnant and we are not currently trying, but it is something that could potentially be a possibility. And so since it is possibly a possibility, it's something that I am focusing on. And with that said, even if I wasn't planning to conceive, or if it wasn't on my radar, I would be doing a lot of the same things just to make sure that I was replenishing my body and making sure that I was feeling really healthy. I would still really want to be working towards having healthy menstrual cycles, seeing them normalize and really replenishing those nutrients, even if I wasn't actively trying. So I just kind of want to put it out there that these things are not only important if you're trying, but I thought it would be a fun way to talk about some of the things that I'm doing because it is possibly on the radar. And so knowing what I know about pregnancy, having gone through 2 pregnancies, 2 postpartum, a combined nearly 5 years of breastfeeding. So what is that? 18 months of pregnancy plus about 5 years of breastfeeding. It's just very much on my radar that I have spent the past 6 years or so in a state of giving. Really, my body has been giving nutrients to my children and to my family. And so it's really, for me, it's really important to take that time to make sure that I am fully healthy and restored. As a mom of two, what I can say is that you need to, your kids, they wake up every day, they want food, they want love, they want care, and you have to be on. It's not like a job where sometimes you can call in sick, you're always a mom. And so it's really important to me that my kids are healthy and that they're strong and that we do everything in our power. I mean, that's what every parent wants, to do everything in your power to make sure to do the best for your kids. But with that said, what I've come to realize is that you got to put on your oxygen mask first. Cliche or not, you really do. And because I have had this thyroid thing for a long time, what I know is that, for example, like if my thyroid is off, I'll feel really, really tired, and I might even have a hard time getting out of bed. Like, because I'm really aware of it and I'm on top of it, I deal with it, I address it. Like, it's not, I have great energy the vast majority of the time. So this is not something that has been like a really, really big deal for me. But with that being said, I know what it feels like to be really low energy. I know what it feels like to not really have it in me to do what I need to do. And so above all else, when I'm thinking about how to prepare for pregnancy, I want to make sure that I do everything in my power to make sure that I am feeling good, because every morning I wake up and I have to take care of my kids. So if I want to add another child to the mix, I need to make sure that I can handle that I'm at my top form. And the best way that I know how to do that is to ensure that I am nourished, and my menstrual cycles really serve as kind of like a reminder, as a progress report. Because if they're out of line, it means that something else is out of line. So for me, I don't only talk about this whole menstrual cycle as a vital sign thing on the podcast. It's actually an integral part of my life, and always charting, and I'm always tracking, and I'm always using that as a guide in my own personal life and as a reflection of my own health. So let's go through as a quick review of what the 10 things were that I'm doing, just as a quick recap. So the first thing I'm doing is eating liver regularly, so at least once or twice a week. The second thing I'm doing is taking cod liver oil pretty much every day. The third thing I'm doing is replenishing vital nutrients, so with nutrient-dense foods, lots of real food like meat, vegetables, fruit, etc. Number 4, I'm eating lots of healthy fats for lots of different reasons, not the least of which is satisfying cravings and feeling satiated throughout the day. Number 5, eating fermented foods and also regularly consuming bone broth to support my gut health. Number 6, optimizing my thyroid health. For me, that's one of my biggest health challenges. And so I am staying on top of that and wanting to make sure that it is optimized prior to even thinking about conceiving again. Number 7, optimizing my menstrual cycles. So I'm continuously using my menstrual cycles as a guide. They're giving me a progress report. And really what I'm looking for is the normalization of my cycles and several cycles kind of within that normal pattern before, again, I even think about conceiving. Number 8, spacing my children. So one of the most important ways for me currently that I have prepared for pregnancy is to purposely space the next one. So I had it in my mind that I was going to take at least 2 to 3 years before even considering another baby. And so in my case, that was just a really important break to have, to allow my body to just fully restore and recover and replenish. Number 9, optimizing my sleep. So although it's challenging for me as a recovering night owl, optimizing my sleep plays a key role in supporting my menstrual cycle health, and therefore an important role in preparing for pregnancy. And last but not least, cooking healthy meals for my family, aka sneaking healthy food in for the hubby. so that not only am I being nourished, but that my partner is being nourished, so that we are both actively preparing for pregnancy from a nutritional standpoint. And so that brings us to the end of this episode. I would love to hear what you think about this list. I'd love to hear if it's similar. So if you're listening and you're also preparing for pregnancy, whether it's, again, like years out, kind of like in my case, or whether it's currently or whether you are actively trying. I would love to hear if your list is similar to my list. Like, are the things that you are doing that are totally different to some of the things that I'm doing, things that you think I should have mentioned but didn't? Because of course there's a lot of other things that I could add to this list. I could go on and on, but I think an hour is probably sufficient for today's podcast episode. But I want to hear your thoughts. So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/community for your invitation to join us in the Fertility Friday Facebook group, in case you haven't joined us in there yet. If you are new to the show and you are new to the fertility awareness method, make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/fam101 to download your free copy of my 3-part video series all about fertility awareness. So this is a video series that I put together just as a way to really share with you some insights into the fertility awareness method and really give you some basics, because I know for a lot of you, this is kind of like your first foray into this information. So again, that's fertilityfriday.com/fam101. And of course, I want to thank you for listening to today's episode. You'll find the show notes for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/207. I want to say a special shout out to the show sponsor, Steamy Chick. So again, make sure to head over to steamychick.com and check out the Vaginal Steam Facilitator training. What a great opportunity to learn more about vaginal steaming, and also to spread the word about this ancient practice to women all over the world. So steamychick.com and check out the Steam Facilitator training. And I just want to thank you for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate those of you for tuning into the show. I really appreciate all of you for sharing the show with your friends and tagging each other in the posts and just talking about the show and raising awareness. It's really exciting to see what's happened over the past 3.5, I think it is, years since starting this podcast. So many women I've been able to connect with in the Facebook group, and so many women I've been able to connect with, through the different programs that I have. And it's just been an amazing opportunity to get to know more of the global community. I mean, it comes with the challenge of hearing stories, the challenges that we as women face, whether it's challenges with your practitioners, challenges with fertility, challenges with health. But ultimately, we have started this conversation. And every woman who discovers this podcast, every woman who shares this podcast with a friend, the more women that know about this, I believe the world is going to be a different place. It already is. The more women that learn about how their menstrual cycles are intimately connected with their health and their fertility, the more power that we have to make decisions, the more power that we have to be able to get the care that we need. And so I'm really appreciative for all of you for being part of this. Now, if you're wanting to go deeper into fertility awareness, if you're ready to clarify what the heck is going on with your cervical mucus, if you're ready to be really confident using fertility awareness to avoid pregnancy when you want to avoid pregnancy, and to achieve pregnancy when you want to achieve pregnancy, and also as a tool for health to really dive deeper into what's happening with your cycles, then I invite you to join us in July for my 10-week Fertility Awareness Mastery Group program. So make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program and apply. We have a space for you in there. And you don't need to have perfect cycles in order to join us. That's not about perfection. I know I get a lot of emails from women who have concerns about, is this program going to be for me? Do I need to have charting experience? Do my cycles have to look a certain way? And the answer is no. You come as you are. I've had women in the group who literally just came off the pill like that Monday. I've had women in the group who've never taken the pill. I've had women in the group who've been trying to conceive for a really long time. I've had women in the group who are absolutely not. They're avoiding pregnancy, and I've had women in the group who have no charting experience at all, like they've never charted one cycle. And I've had women in the group who've charted their cycles for over a year. And so all of the women, regardless of what level you are at, will learn something new. and we'll get something out of the program. So don't worry about where you're at. There's no such thing as a perfect cycle. You don't need to have one. I've never seen one, and I've seen thousands upon thousands of menstrual cycle charts. So if you have questions, just make sure to let me know. But head over to fertilityfriday.com/group program and apply. We'd love to have you in our group in July. We'll be starting in a couple weeks. So with that, I just want to say thank you for listening to today's show. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.